and welcome to episode 119 of the BerlinBrigade.com podcast. I am David Guerra, former member of Alpha Company 6th Battalion, 502nd Infantry, Berlin Brigade, and I am your host for this episode of the BerlinBrigade.com podcast. And again, I welcome you. So, what are we doing this time? Well, here's what's going on. Starting with this episode and interspersed throughout the summer and spring of 2021 is what I'd like to call the first ever BerlinBrigade.com Film Festival. Not the first annual, because we haven't had it. When you say first annual, it means that it's kind of gives you the connotation that it's already happened. No, it's happening now. So this is going to be the first ever BerlinBrigade.com Film Festival. Now, what is the BerlinBrigade.com Film Festival? Well, just what it says. I'll be taking a look at, let me rephrase that. I'll be talking a lot about and streaming my impressions and reviewing some of those unique films set in and around the time of the United States Army in Berlin. That's right, from 1945, the end of the war, to just about 1994, a little bit after reunification and before we left. The only requirement is that these movies deal with the question of the divided Berlin and just after reunification. So I'll share my insight into the movie as we talk about, as we talk and watching and sharing. So the first movie in the BerlinBrigade.com Film Festival, or the BerlinBrigade.com 2021 Film Festival, is The Big Lift. Released in April 26, 1950, The Big Lift stars Montgomery Clift as the Technical Sergeant Danny McCullough, Paul Douglas as Hank Kowalski. Isn't there always, like in a war movie, a Hank and a Kowalski? But in this case, it's all in one, and that's Paul Douglas. Cornell Borchers, that's their name, and she plays Frederica Burkhardt, the love interest. And interesting little fact, though, this movie was released on April 26, 1950 in the United States. It was not until April of 1953 that it was released in West Germany. Interesting. So, you know what? Let's get this show started.
Einsteigen bitte.
The Internet Movie Database, or the IMDb website, describes The Big Lift as experiences of two Air Force sergeants during the 1948 Berlin airlift. Also from the IMDb website, the storyline is described as, in 1948, the Soviet Union blockades the Allied sectors of Berlin to bring the entire city under their control. A semi-documentary about the resulting Berlin airlift gives way to stories of two fictitious U.S. Air Force participants, Sergeant Hank Kowalski, there's Hank, there's Kowalski, whose hatred of the Germans proves resistant to change, and Sergeant Danny McCullough, whose pursuit of an attractive German war widow gives him a crash course in the seamy side of occupied Berlin. I've seen this movie before. I've seen it numerous times. It's a really great movie in my opinion. I like it, but, again, that's why I have an opinion and you have yours. But drop me an email, drop me a tweet, let me know what you think of the movie. So, as I get started, how am I watching this movie? Well, I'm watching this movie on the Amazon Prime. It's part of those movies that you don't have to pay extra for. So, it's there. But also by visiting YouTube and in the search window, type in The Big Lift and click search, or click on that little magnifying glass. The search results will show you about 4 or 5 results that offer the movie in its entirety online on YouTube. So let's get started. The Big Lift, starring Montgomery Clift and the blockaded city of West Berlin. Oh, also, if you want to follow along, what I'm going to do is I will make notes throughout the movie. But I'll give you a time marker. So just to let you know where I'm at, what I'm watching. So I just press play. And instantly it's the black and white 20th Century Fox logo, and the search lights up in the air. So here we go. Already 1 minute in, and the opening credits are given, and we see a little placard, kind of a little talking about what's going on. And this picture was made in occupied Germany. All scenes were photographed in the exact locale associated with the story, including episodes in the American, French, British, and Russian sectors of Berlin. Let's press play. At about 1 minute, 14 seconds, the placard changes, and it says, with the exception of Montgomery Clift and Paul Douglas, all military personnel appearing in this film are actual members of the U.S. Armed Forces on duty in Germany. Let's press play. Hey, at the 1:30 mark, we see the old AK building. What it looked like back then when all four flags had individuals to raise them. So let's press on. All right, about 4 minutes, 1 second in, the Sergeant, Hank Kowalski, there he is, he gives the Major a salute. However, he does not wait for the Major to return the salute. Is it because maybe he's a Master Sergeant, he doesn't have to wait? Or they're just throwing military protocol out the window because it's a movie, you know, they got to cut things for time. No, he just just puts his hand up there, then he brings it down, doesn't really wait for anything, and then kind of halfway up or halfway down, the Major then returns the salute. So something interesting, I guess, for those of you that are, military movie buffs, that you want to make sure how accurate things are. Well, if this is any indication, we're going to have a fun afternoon. Here we go. About 9 minutes and just about 9:56 or so, you see Kowalski looking out the window of the C-54, and they're flying over the ruins of Frankfurt. And again, I didn't mention it earlier, but you start to see that there's an issue with Kowalski and the Germans. So obviously the synopsis does talk about what's going to happen. So again, a little foreshadowing there for those that are for the first time, not first-time watchers, I guess. So let's press on. Let's press play. Now, this next one, you're going to have to be careful if you're going to pause it. It's about 14 minutes, 12 seconds right there. When it cuts from the scene of the pilot looking out the window talking to Tempelhof control, there's going to be a really fast-moving, quote-unquote, Russian fighter that approaches the C-54. And it's actually a U.S. U.S. Air Force at that time, yes, Air Force P-47 Thunderbolt, and just goes barreling through the gap between the C-54 and the red star tagged or tailed aircraft. So just a little FYI there. 19 minutes and 21 seconds. Then we see the classic intra-service rivalry kick in when the Navy pull off. So back to the movie. All right, now we're all the way back up here at 22 minutes, 9 seconds. And what we're about to see in the movie is like the precursor of the Berlin Brigade drill team. So it's an honor guard, Office of Military Government, there in Berlin. And pretty interesting to see a parade from that side, or the outside looking in instead of being on the inside, right? So let's press play. All right, so 29:43. The band is just about to start playing, and when the guy's talking to the reporter, McCullough's talking to the reporter, the band kicks in, and you're going to hear some familiar tunes. But then again, they've been familiar for so long, right? So let's press play. All right, now we're up to 39 minutes, 10 seconds. Montgomery Clift, McCullough, at this point, he's being taxied over to where the Frau is, and we get to see the Trümmer Frau, the women who in the aftermath of World War II helped clear and reconstruct the bombed cities, in this case Berlin. So you get to see them in the background. The Frau there, she's there, and she she's working, she's doing her part, and that's Frederica Burkhardt. Golly, sorry about that. And so you get to see it, but in the background you see others, and of course you see some men back there, but you see the women as well, hard at work, picking up the pieces. Let's press play. Now, throughout the rest of the scene, you get to see, the background of Berlin, not taken away from the story, but it brings the divided city, the post-war city, to light. It brings it forward in the movie, which is pretty good. It gives everybody a good idea of what was happening, how things looked after the war, but it doesn't really do it justice because, again, boots on the ground, that's a whole different story, a whole different perspective. Let's press on, or press play. 53:36 into the movie, and we get a shot of the post-World War II version of the immediate post-World War II version of the victory column. So let's press play. Now, at the 1 hour, 3 minute, 15 second mark, Hank Kowalski remembers who that guy is. And he's walking out. As he walks outside the building, down the street, at the far end of the street, you get to see the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, or what's left out. Does not have a lot of detail, but again, it's just one of those things that they made sure they got into the movie. So press play. An hour, 9 and 14 seconds into it, and they just crossed in through the Soviet sector, through the Brandenburg Gate. And there's going to be a quick cut to a gentleman, an older gentleman, that is selling some souvenir photographs. Behind him is a rubble, some rubble. Eventually all is going to get torn down, and it's just going to be flat, and that becomes that no man's land. And ultimately, that what you're looking at right there, that area will eventually become the United States Embassy in Berlin. And then right as the camera pans, as Montgomery Cliff and Frederica, my apologies again, Cornell Borchers, as they start walking, Frederica is the name of the character, as they start walking, the camera pans across from right to left, and you're going to see the remains of the Adlon Hotel. So let's press play. 1 hour 26 or 27 minutes. You start seeing Danny walk through the city after he kind of breaks up with Frederica, and you start seeing the different aspects of life in Berlin, and you start seeing more the humanity side of things, and you start seeing, hey, here's kind of that reality that was going on and that they went through. So I guess at this point, it's kind of a start. It starts to turn his mind around, starts really painting a better picture of just, that there is fallout, there is casualties. And, let's press play. 1 hour, 57 minutes, 40 seconds, give or take. It's at the end of the movie. And that's pretty much little propaganda jab there at the very end. Hank is standing on the tarmac there at Tempelhof, and off in the distance, it's still foggy, it's still socked in, but he looks over and says, well, if they can take off when the birds won't even fly, I guess a blockade isn't much of a weapon. And the plane goes flying off, and of course the pigeons there, the Berlin pigeons, are on the ground looking up at the planes flying by. That about sums it up. Very good movie, very interesting movie. For 1950, fresh from the end of the Berlin blockade, the Berlin airlift. Again, insightful, kind of talks about how this time was unique because it was just fresh from the end of the war, still a lot of the rubble going on, and the Soviets trying to play the heavy, but obviously that didn't work out in the end, and trying to flex their muscle, quote unquote, at the time. But again, the Berlin airlift saved the day until something else later on. So again, this was The Big Lift, starring Montgomery Cliff, Paul Douglas, Cornell Borchers, Bruni Lobel, and O.E. Haza as Steiber. So again, thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching. And let's wrap up this episode. And that concludes the first movie in the BerlinBrigade.com 2021 Film Festival. The Big Lift, a 2-hour movie set in West Berlin during the blockade of Berlin and during the Berlin airlift. Now, while The Big Lift did not go on to win any Academy Awards, it did, as I mentioned, provide a very small glimpse into what was happening on the ground in post-World War II Berlin, and of course in the skies above. And just look at the IMDb. They rated a 6.5 out of 10. And on the Amazon, they rated 4 stars out of... So 116 people, average 4 stars out of 5. It's a good little movie. I would rate it, definitely a 4. Because again, we have that stake. We have that interest in Berlin. The love story, again, kind of... You did almost see it coming. And when it all turned around for Hank Kowalski, you didn't really see that coming, but again, it did, because it got Goethe thinking and kind of believing that, hey, yes, things can be different, can be better. You don't have to just be led by the nose blindly to get there. But in this case, she came through it. She came up on her own. She came to her own conclusions. So pretty cool deal. And it's very interesting to see that glimpse of Berlin, the background of Berlin that came to the front throughout many parts of the movie. So again, listen, it's time to wrap up episode 119 of the Before we go. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for joining me today. And I also want to thank everyone that supports the website and the podcast. So I greatly appreciate it. And again, a lot of it is just, with donations. Again, I thank you very much for those of you that have donated. And again, those donations certainly help when it comes to paying the bills around here. And if you have not yet donated, please consider doing so. And you can donate through the PayPal donation buttons at the bottom of the BerlinBrigade.com homepage and at the bottom of the contact page. Now, also, if you are interested in being a guest on a podcast, again, I ask you to drop me a note and we'll get the ball rolling. We'll get the logistics all figured out and get you on the show. Also, if you have an idea for a movie to be part of the BerlinBrigade.com 2021 Film Festival, drop me an email, david@BerlinBrigade.com, or tweet me at BerlinBrigade. Let me know, and who knows, your selection might just make it onto this year's film festival. So again, I thank you. I'm David Guerra, and I thank you for listening. Danke schön, Auf Wiedersehen, Tschüss.
Endstation, bitte alle aussteigen.